authors. I'm Joanne Morrell, children's and young adult fiction writer and author of short non-fiction for authors. Thanks for joining me for the Hybrid Author podcast, sharing interviews from industry professionals to help you forge a career as a hybrid author, both independently and traditionally publishing your books. You can get the show notes for each episode and sign up for your free author pass over at the Hybrid Author website to discover your writing process, get tips on how to publish productively, and get comfortable promoting your books at www.hybridauthor.com.au. Let's crack on with the episode.
Hello, authors! I hope you're all keeping well in whatever part of the world you reside and listen to the podcast in. Today's interview is with author and visionary entrepreneur Andrea Puting, and I chat to Andrea from Manuscript to Bestseller, the transformative power of professional guidance. What kind of professional guidance can be offered to transform a manuscript to a bestseller? At what stage of the manuscript should professional guidance be undertaken? Andrea's advice to authors on finding trusted sources of professional guidance, her work, services, and much more. So in my author adventure this week, I received some pretty heartwarming reviews of author fears and how to overcome them. Now, this was received from judges from the Writer's Digest competition, self-published awards I entered in February of this year, and it was awarded in October. I didn't win, else you would have heard about it already, but it was really nice to receive some reviews from one of the judges. They kind of just assign a judge that is in that category. You're not aware of who that person is, but their background is obviously either author, agent, publisher, or some industry professional. So what they had to say about my book, which is Author Fears and How to Overcome Them, if you're not aware of it, it is a non-fiction self-improvement mindset, internal, external fears kind of book. And it's the kind of book that I feel you could sit down and read it like you would read a book from start to finish, or, you know, it's categorized, the way it is categorized is for specific fears relating to specific topics. If that's what you're dealing with or whatnot, then you can go to that specific category and read about it then, rather than going through the whole thing. It's kind of like a flip to book is how I would describe it. My other book I feel is the same. It's like quick tips. So you would just go and find quick tips in whichever category or part that you want to learn about, unless you want to learn it all, of course. Yeah, some of the review was on structure, organization, and pacing. And it said this book is exemplary in its structure, organization, and pacing. The structure of the chapters or the various parts aid in compelling organization of the story or information. The pacing is even throughout and matches the tone and genre of the book. And the review said of plot, story, or topic appeal, it's a smart choice to craft a guidebook with brief fears and tips on how to overcome them. The writing audience surely finds a need for a book on this topic. An author does a great job of approaching the problems from different vantage points. Author often shares her own experiences and bravely uses her own insecurities as teaching examples. Man, I'm riddled with insecurities, I'm telling you. That book is an open page book of my insecurities. It absolutely is. So, and I find with my non-fiction style, I can only share from lived experience. That's why these books came about. They were never chosen. I was never striving to write non-fiction. It's from the writing and author career that I go after, and these things have arisen and these books have just come out. So, the review for voice and writing style. This book is exemplary in its voice and writing style. It has a unique voice and the writing style is consistent throughout. The style and tone are also consistent with or will appeal to readers of the intended genre. And then lastly of the review, in a few exemplary sentences, please share with the entrant 1 to 3 things that you enjoyed or that you think readers will find compelling about this book and why. It says, the topics are stellar. A writer could get the start of a good insight by just looking at the list of fears and how the author has grouped them. Author puts great time into coming up with these entries, and there's a wealth of good advice with many of them. It's a fresh, positive take on encouraging the writer. So overall, the review was good. Of course, not all reviews are perfect, so there were some other comments about the reader being so captivated by the topic that they wanted a longer expansion into the problem and then more action steps on occasion to help them through the fear. So that was some feedback that I'll take on board going ahead. The style of the book is just short. It's short non-fiction, that's what I call it. It's short and snappy and sweet. It's not a big, long, deep dive into these things, and maybe that's what this person would like. But, that's definitely good to take constructive feedback as well. So I was really pleased to receive all that. If you've never heard of Writer's Digest, it's an American magazine, I think it started out, but it's also a really good resource for writers. They do a lot of competitions and they have a lot of knowledge, and it's definitely well worth checking out their site and just getting involved how you can. I think there's actually a writer, there's a magazine. I see it here in Australia as well. So, you could often maybe even publish some articles in that. On another bookish note, we're not shy 1 week off Christmas, which is a bit scary. And I had an experience the other day that I wanted to share. So my daughter is really into The Big Bang Theory, which is the, American sitcom television show. And so this year I went onto places like Etsy and Amazon to check for memorabilia of that sort of topic, that show, and get her some gifts in line with that. So I've ordered a book from Amazon that was a cookbook, and if you think cookbook, most cookbooks are fairly big. They're full of pictures, usually colour, of that sort of making. So I'll just say this book that I ordered, and I was choosing between a couple, which is what annoys me the most. The cover, it was very professional and it was really draws you in. It was very good looking, bright picture of the food on there, good blurb, that sort of thing. Now, when it came, I pulled it out the packet and I could tell straight away it was a self-published book. Now, this is the Hybrid Author podcast. We don't shun self-publishing. No one should. But when it's a bad self-published book and you've paid quite a bit for it, it wasn't a cheap book by any means. Cookbooks do come with a bit of a price tag on them because they're probably quite hard to produce with the size of them, the thickness of them, the quality of them. So this book was, as I said, the cover design is where it stopped for it completely. And it was tiny. It was very small as well. When I started flipping through, the inside matter was pretty much really poor quality. It was faded. The pictures were faded, black and white. And it was so disappointing. I was so disappointed by this book to the point where I actually went on Amazon and rated a review. Now, this book had 47 reviews and some were okay. Most of them were not. And if I had gone on to read the reviews before buying it, I would have seen someone had actually taken pictures. So the same experience I had. They were so disappointed when getting the book. Someone actually returned it. I'm not going to that length. I'm not going to get another book now. It's Christmas. So next week, so it was really disappointing. It's lessons learned, I'm telling you now, that I will always read reviews now for buying products. It just shows you the power of a review. It just made me think about my work as a whole and our work as self-published authors. Anyway, you should always, always, always be thinking of the value that you're adding someone by the quality of the work you're putting out, by the quality of the make of the product. Because if you don't, and you are charging someone quite a lot, you are effectively, I think about how you're going to make them feel if they receive your product and you've sent disappointment, pretty much. Disappointment is the word that I would describe this book. Now, I'm still going to give it to her. But I'm quite embarrassed, actually. I'm quite embarrassed to give it to her. And I'll also, she's a kid, she might not care. That might not mean anything to her. I'll obviously explain the situation to her. But lesson learned, now the more than ever, make sure that your work is up to a standard and you're not ripping people off. Because that's how I feel. I feel like I've been ripped off by this product. And in return, I've gave the person a low review. And I wasn't the only one. Just be mindful. Read reviews. Do good work. The other thing that happened to me this week that I wanted to share was I saw an article online about an author who has won a prize for something, and the tagline for the author's work absolutely floored me, because after I finish, after this women's fiction project is out and it's launched and it's released and that's it, my next writing project that I'm undertaking next year is a traditional project. It's a young adult fiction book, and there's an award that I would like to put it in for. Now, this book, the idea has been with me probably for about 2 to 3 years, and I had some ideas about the character, usually a title comes to me first with a lot of stuff. Don't know how it's going to end, little bits and snippets and things. And so I wrote them down, and I wrote probably a chapter or two, and I left it at that. That wasn't the time for this book, but reading this author's tagline, it was my book. I was like, oh my gosh, oh no. And it actually so happens that this author is with the publishing house that runs the award that I'm considering putting the work in for. And so in my mind, like, the thoughts that I was having was, oh, well, there's this book now. I wonder if they'll publish with that publishing house. And if they do, will that book go against mine now? They won't want my book because it's too similar to this author's book, which can be a thing. Or, I honestly haven't ever felt that way before about comparing myself to others and even questioning whether I should write that book now just because someone else had written something that sounds exactly the same as the themes of my book. Now, that's just themes. That person's not going to write the same as me. They're not going to write the same story as me. And this is something I've preached before about. If we all were given the same idea, not one of us is going to come up with the same story, the same plot, the same characters, the way we tell it. So I damn well should still go ahead and write this book. It did come to me. The other thing that I thought about as well, if you've ever read Elizabeth Gilbert's Big Magic, if you haven't, go and read it. And there's a part in it where she talks about, it's very whimsical, about ideas floating through the air and you just sort of catch them and they can go by you, but where do they go then? Do they go to other people? Has this author caught my idea because it's gone on? That's what I was thinking, and I thought, oh my gosh. But also just wanted to say, don't be disheartened if you hear of someone writing something like yours. They always talk about books, which books are similar to yours in the market. So this could actually spin it on its head and be a positive, because this person is doing very well, and they will, if they publish it, I don't think they'll go through that same publisher, but if they do, it will inevitably do really well. So I could just say, it's very similar to this in the market and blah, blah, blah. So yeah, it's a positive. The other thing I also thought of, because I really thought maybe I shouldn't do that project, I thought, what would I tell my kids? And I think this is a good sort of trick you can say to yourself if you're having these thoughts or doubts about something, any issues or whatever. Just think, what would I tell my kids? Now, if I was feeling like, oh my goodness, this person's work's out there, what if it's either better than mine or no one's going to want it because it's already there and I'm not going to do it? What would I tell my kids? I would tell my kids that they would not be telling the same story as that person. There's, it could be a positive thing. It would be, why do I, or we, if you do it too, internalize stuff so either negatively or differently or fearful and not too positively, but then the way that we would output to another would be of a positive nature. So even just asking that question, what would I say to my kids? I'm able to realise, well, hang on, if I'm telling them that, why am I not telling myself? Yeah, good trick. Definitely use it. So this episode is sponsored by Plotter, Plottr. If you've never heard of Plotter, they are an outlining software tool for writers and authors to outline faster, organise smarter and turbocharge your productivity with the visual book planning and story bible software. Now, I've been using Plotter for my women's fiction and I'm still continually consulting it daily and updating characters and world building as I go for certain details and things like that. They have had a new feature that they've added. It's a major model update. They've now got dark mode, so you can toggle on and off in dark mode while you're working on the go, and it's obviously black dark mode. The colours are vibrant, you can see the text clearer. It's just a really cool way, and that can all help with creativity as well. They've got a full screen text editor. This is how typing in Plotter Mobile was meant to be, bolstered by a new formatting bar. Infinite items through Plotter Pro. They've added a limited number of scene cards and characters and places and notes. Things they've improved, it's, this mode's improved. Easier way of moving scene cards. Scrolling the timeline is much smoother and more responsive. Larger buttons to add new chapters and new plot lines. And they have updated, obviously, Android instabilities and crashes and performance rendering and any other small bugs, as technology always is continuously improved. So yeah, they have the they've also got a Dropbox integration for Plotter Mobile. So they're continuously working hard behind the scenes to give authors a better user experience. It's such a great tool, honestly, and I'm going to be using it going forward for all my books. Even this one that I was just talking about, the young adult fiction, I will be doing another template for that. So if you haven't ever heard of it, it's www.plotter.com. Go over and get your free trial now.
Andrea Puting is a visionary entrepreneur and the founder of Chocolate and Coffee Day for Religious Harmony. Her best-selling and award-winning books, Compassionate Prosperity and Compassionate Purpose, weave together the threads of social mission with the quest for deeper meaning in our lives. As a speaker and podcast host, Andrea advocates for unity and the potent impact of storytelling. She's the founder of Puting Words, a self-publishing house where she empowers emerging authors to carve out their own paths to bestseller status. Living in Melbourne, Australia, Andrea cherishes the company of her family, the delight of chocolate, and the spark of engaging conversations. Welcome to the Hybrid Author Podcast, Andrea.
Thank you, Jo. I'm happy to be here.
Oh, we're thrilled to have you. What an absolutely award-winning bio, I would say. You've clearly done so much and got many passions, which is great. But can you tell us how you came to get your start in the publishing and writing game?
Ooh, so it's interesting because when I looked back recently at my high school English reports, I was definitely not a writer, and I really missed out on that bit. They said my essays were terrible. So that's a really interesting start. But years later, way back last century in the dinosaur era of the internet, when I started a business, I started writing articles because in those days it was really easy to get people onto your newsletter. So I started writing a lot of articles, and I discovered that I could actually write, and I could write articles that were touching people. They would send me back messages saying how much what I'd written had meant to them.
Oh, wow.
So I kind of got the idea that, hey, maybe I can write. So when time went by and I sold that business, went to work with someone else, blah, 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 blah. But when I was reinventing myself, writing just became natural as part of that. And I was speaking and doing a lot of that as well, so that the two of them just kind of come together as an important thing. And when I started to work with somebody else, okay, let's write a book about this topic that we're talking about. And so we did that. That was a joint project. And that book was published in India, and I had no control over how that looked or what was going on with that. So when I came to further down the line and I started doing my podcast, Social Mission Revolution, and then I wanted to write about that, I was just so inspired about this idea of there is something greater in the world that we can all do. There is something for each of us to make a difference. I wanted to write the book about that. And when I went to write the book, I realized that I had two separate books, one for business, one for individuals. And I also had written another book at the same time. Well, I'd written it pretty much at the same time. So I was confronted with, well, how do I publish 3 books at the same time? I can't afford to do that. Who can? So I decided to, instead of investing in having the books published, I would invest in learning from the experts on how to publish, how to self-publish, and how to do it right. So I went down that journey and learnt step by step the procedure for publishing. So once I had published my books, the next thing was people were asking me to help them publish their books. And suddenly I find myself with a publishing business.
Wow, that's an incredible adventure.
Well, it certainly has been an adventure, I can tell you. It's an unexpected adventure. I certainly didn't expect to become a publisher. I guess I didn't expect to be an author some years back, but here I am.
Yeah, well, it's amazing. It sounds like you're guided by obvious clear inspiration and passion for what you do, but you've also connected with others who, respect what you say and what you put out and follow you, and therefore want your help as well. So that's great that you've been able to offer that. Well, today's topic is From Manuscript to Bestseller, the Transformative Power of Professional Guidance. So we're very excited to hear from you about this. But first up, what are some of the kinds of professional guidance, that can be offered to transform a manuscript to a bestseller?
Yes, there's lots of things that people don't think about in publishing or self-publishing when they decide to write a book. So they've gone through all that, they've written their book, and it's like, well, what do I do with it now? So the guidance that is available is that whole process. So to start with, putting your book together isn't just having a Word document and then going, okay, well, I'll just stick that onto an Amazon thing and that'll create a book. No, It needs to have really thinking about how that's going to go together so that the book looks good. It reflects your message and is easy for people to read. So you open the book and they're not overwhelmed with just line after line of writing. It needs to be spread out and formatted in a way that people look at it and want to read it. And of course, then there's the book covers and I've had people say that they've just designed something on Canva or got someone with Fiverr. Well, that's good if it works out for you, but then when you actually get it in to upload it to where it needs to go, sometimes it just doesn't work. So there's lots of things along those lines. But there's also that important thing of what are you going to do with when your book gets formatted, you've got a cover, what now? It's where do you put it? Well, yeah, you want it on Amazon, but there's also other avenues to get your book on so that it reaches a wider audience. So I love to help people, they get their book into pretty much every online bookseller that's out there, and to find their book suddenly in a country like Finland is just an amazing thing. You Google your own book and you find it in all these interesting countries. So it's that kind of thing of where do you go to put it? Where does that belong so that it's there and ready to go? And of course, there's that Amazon bestseller that everyone wants to conquer. So getting that advice on how to find those categories, finding those right categories that will get you into that and using the right keywords. The thing that professional guidance, when it comes to Amazon, why it's so important is that Amazon keep changing what they do. So what they were doing 6 months ago is not what they're doing now. So you have to keep up with the changes, and you could Google it and end up reading something that's completely wrong and confusing. And of course, getting it up there is only one step. You've also got to have that big launch that helps you to get to number one. It's not just, well, I'll just put it on there and it'll automatically become number one. You have to work at that and understanding all that process of how to get that, what you need to do, how many books you need to sell, all those kind of things. If you've got someone there guiding you through it, it's a whole lot easier and a whole lot quicker.
Yeah, well, it sounds like there's obviously a lot to it. So somebody should incorporate professional guidance once they've conquered their story, once they have their story written, and they're effectively wanting to turn it into a book. That's when they should look at maybe gaining the advice of professionals.
Now, this really depends. So do you really has someone written their book by themselves? Some people need it right from the start. Some people need a book coach to guide them through. Even though I had already written a book, when I wrote these books, I actually did engage a coach more on an editorial basis, but she also helped me to develop what I was saying and to make sure that the content that I had flowed. So for me, that was really important. It's really important to have your book edited. So even if you've written your book, get it edited. Don't let it go without editing. So there's editing and proofreading to be done. They need to be done on a professional level. So that's when I would, if they haven't wanted to engage a book coach, I would be going, get your editor.
Yeah, I can see the value in a book coach. We've had a lady on, I forget, it was probably last year, who I think she was a writing coach was her thing. And I hadn't really ever heard of it before, I guess. I've always kind of tackled my work just start to finish and things like that. But
I've had many works over the years, and some published, some not. Each one has taught me something different, whether it was the first one, which was actually the discipline to sit down and know that I could finish a longer work and be dedicated to perfecting this thing, which was over the course of probably a year, a couple of years. Even that was a learning curve for me, for someone who wasn't disciplined. But I suppose even just considering having a book coach or something for those who haven't ever considered it, and that's their first book, then they don't necessarily have to spend probably that length of time. They would be working with somebody. I don't know. So how long was it? How long did you work with the book coach for to get your book out? What was the time frame?
Yeah. Well, when I started working with it, I had already pretty much written the book.
Right.
And that's when she looked at it and said, no, you need to split this into two, because you got two different target markets with this book. So I think I worked with her for a couple of months, for about 8 weeks. And we just went through chapter by chapter to make sure that it was fluid, that it just ran smoothly. So then when I did the second book, I didn't use her as a book coach. I had her edit my book.
Right, yeah. So for you, yeah, like you said, it was more editorial, whereas some people, they need that check-in. I'm someone who's definitely works out of accountability. If someone's waiting on something, I will get it done. That will force me to get it done. And I think for a lot of, especially aspiring authors, for some people, just finding the time to stick to a project, or some days the motivation to write can be quite hard. So that's where, a book coach could come in and then and double the what do you call it? Services, I guess, a book coach and then someone who's helping with the editorial stuff at the same time, or rather than separate them out. But I absolutely agree with always having your work professionally edited. I learned that not the hard way, but it was definitely a lesson I had myself. And I think that some people, they can see the value, I guess, in editing, but it can be quite costly. So they think, maybe try and cut corners, but out of all the product, I think that's the one that they need to think of. This is your product for life going on. This is a small chunk. It's an investment to make it the best it can be. You don't scrimp on that. That's one of the main parts, isn't it?
Absolutely. And I don't know about you, but I've read a couple of books that haven't been edited, and it's so hard to read them. You get halfway and you just go, I can't be bothered with this. Oh, and that might sound like I'm a grammar snob or something, but I'm not. However, you find stuff that's all over the place and you just go, seriously, couldn't you have had someone look at this?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. Oh, no, I agree. Well, can you share with us as well? Obviously, there is a lot of services out there and there is a lot of avenues authors can take to get help and advice and things like that. Can you advise authors on finding trusted sources for professional guidance, to help them move forward? Because you hear about there's a lot of sharks in the industry, isn't there? Especially in ways of hybrid publishing as well.
Absolutely. There are some things that I would consider. For me, one has to be their reputation. Who have they worked with? You can look for their testimonials that they have. I think that's really important to see what their clients are saying about them. That's always wonderful. For me, one of the important things comes down to budget, because some of the publishing out there cost so much, thousands and thousands of dollars. And I just go, who can afford to do that? So you've got to realize that there are some costs and people have to make a living on doing this. However, if it feels like it's overinflated price and outside of your budget, then find someone else. However, be realistic about what it's going to cost. And I think and the other thing is really important is to talk to the person that you will be working with. I like my clients they only work with me, so they know that they're not working with a whole lot of different people. So everything is streamlined for them, know that I'm the go-to person, and there's no here, there, and everywhere where messages get lost. And that's where frustration comes in on any job, on any position, anything that you do. If you've got a whole lot of people you've got to deal with, then something can and will go wrong usually.
Yeah. No, I hear what you're saying. So do your research, obviously trust your gut. I think I definitely write with my gut, and I think you can get a feeling when you're engaging with somebody or something with them. They might be a bit shady.
Yeah.
So what are some of the services that you provide?
Well, I go from the manuscript. So, once they've written their book and had it edited, I still like them to have it proofread after that, because I've found that even after editing, there is things that are missed. And then if we don't get it proofread, then what happens is we have a lot more back and forwards in the formatting stage of the book. So I can offer proofreading services, and then we go into formatting the book, making the book look and feel like the client's message and story. For example, one of my clients wrote a finance book, and she came from the point of view that, from her own experience, that she had created this financial secure life for herself by the time she was 30 and was able to go and surf. So she wanted the surfing aspect to be brought up. So she had her with a surfboard on the cover, and then we used images of surfing right through the book to highlight to people that if you follow this method, you too can do your dream, which may be surfing. So there's things like that we do, that just to make it a piece of artwork inside and out. So we get the cover designed with graphic designer, and we go through the uploading of the books so that they're available internationally. They're available on Amazon, and we get the books to best-selling for them. And I provide them with support throughout, so that when it does come to that day when we're going to launch the book on Amazon to get the bestseller, that we have the processes through that so that they're ready. They've got their team going, ready to buy their book and get it into that bestseller level. That's so exciting for them to get there.
So what is to add on to that, what's your general advice to authors striving to write and hit the bestseller list? Obviously, if they work with yourself, that's a service you provide to get them there. But does it, and you've said it obviously in the beginning, it's many things to do with the cover and all sorts of things, but the work itself, I guess.
I think the most important thing for an author is truly to believe in themselves and their message, and to know that what they're writing or written will change someone's life, and that will make a difference, and that will ripple out into the world. So what you have to say is important, and it is worth sharing. Never let anyone tell you otherwise, and just keep going until you get there. And getting it into be a bestseller it sounds big and hard and daunting, but with the right advice, it's not that hard.
No, I love that. That's really good advice there, because as someone who has struggled with probably self-doubt and self-belief and self-worth for most of the writing life that I've had so far, I'm only truly now at a point where it's quieting those voices, I suppose, for many things. But I see the impact that having low all those things has on your writing as well. You know, it can stop a person in their tracks from actually putting out their story. So
or they get halfway through their book and think, no one's going to read this.
And
don't finish it. Just finish it.
That's a go daily from, this is great, I'm really on to sound really good here, and then the next day you pick it up and you're like, what a lot of crap. That greatness from yesterday is like just being fireballed into the bin. I think that's just part and parcel of what it's like, So yourself, who you had people who you were connecting with, I think to reach that level, it almost affirms to yourself that, what you're sharing is touching people and it is important. But it does start with obviously you believing in your message, for sure. I know that now.
It's a good thing to remember.
Yeah, that's it. Well, thank you so much for your time and expertise, Andrea. Can you share with our listeners where they can discover your works and, your services and everything you do on and offline?
Absolutely. So they can find my books on Amazon, on Barnes & Noble, on anywhere on the internet. And on my website, andreaputing.com.au. But my publishing service, of course, is putingwords.com, and they can go on there and they can there's a link there to get a checklist of, are you ready to publish? So they might like to jump on there and have a look, and we can know whether you're ready to go and give you some ideas of what you need to do to get your book published.
Yeah. Do you find, I'll just add, do you find that people sort of contact you before they've even written a book? Do you have that?
I do have a few people doing that, and I have someone who's been communicating back and forwards. I want to write a book. Can you? I need to talk to you. Yeah. So I have a few people like that, and so they keep saying, "I'll come and publish with you." So I go, okay. Well, I know that might be depending on the person. It might be a year. It might be 2 years. Well, okay. That's great. I'm happy. I'm happy to talk to people about their book, their ideas, and where they're going, what they want to do with it. Even if they don't come and publish with me eventually, I'm happy to give them a little bit of a encouragement on the journey.
Yeah, no, that's great. I asked because I had, I think it was a financial advisor of mine or something, and obviously putting in tax for the book business, and they mentioned, oh yeah, write a book, and then asked about publishing, and I just, my advice was, I'd write the book, write the book first, then look at the publishing, because people just jump the gun, and if you've got nothing to publish, then you're not going to be able to publish.
That's right.
That's it. Oh, well, thanks again, Andrea. That was great.
Thank you, Jo. It's been a real pleasure talking with you.
So there you have it, folks. The amazing Andrea Puting, who is really striving to do amazing things within the community by providing her transformative power and guidance to authors. Next time on the Hybrid Author Podcast, we are at Christmas, so it will be a Merry Christmas mashup from the rest of the guests for the Hybrid Author Podcast for 2023. Amazing, amazing times. I wish you well in your author adventure this next week. That's it from me. Bye for now.
That's the end for now, authors. I hope you're further forward in your author adventure after listening, and I hope you'll listen next time. Remember to head on over to the Hybrid Author website at www.hybridauthor.com.au to get your free author pass. It's bye for now.